Oh my God, I'm so bad at this now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 33 of the Ready Set Shag podcast. I'm your host, the Shagsworth. Call me Tom. Let's be informal. Let's not be. This is a very informal setting. Always great to be back each week with a new guest, talking to people who I'm really interested, people who I'm friends with. I want to know more about, and obviously this week's guest is no exception. We had a couple scheduling snafus, but after sort of a long absence of we haven't really spoken much recently due to just conflicting schedules, and also everyone's busy, right? We're all doing our own stuff, but I'm finally glad to be able to sit down with this man. He's one of my favorite creators on the internet. He is a co-host, a member of the panel on Friday Night Tights. Good, Mr. Ian K, Comix Division. What's going on, man?
The usual life, chaos, car crashes. It seems like I'm no car crashes. I'm just making shit up.
Oh, okay. I was saying, I hope you're not having car crashes.
No. Life is a car crash. It feels like sometimes, but that
it is. That's honestly, I think it is like the perfect analogy for life, or something. Like it's just a series of accidents that you're just trying to recover from constantly.
Oh yeah.
But no, it's really good to see you, dude.
It's good to see you, man. It's been ages.
It really has. Like as I was like thinking about it, and I'm like, who do I need to like have on? Who do I need to talk to? And it just occurred to me, like I haven't seen Comix talk to him in so long.
I know.
And it just comes down. All it comes down to is everyone's busy, right? Like we're all trying to. You're doing your shows. I'm doing my shows. Just trying to make our way, and that's all it's come down to. And I feel bad because, like, seriously, the stuff you put out is awesome. You guys have great talks. Your shows are hilarious. Your panels are great.
Well, thanks.
So it sucks that I haven't been around, but I miss you, dude. I'm glad you're here tonight. I'm glad we're going to get into some talk.
Yeah, likewise. And sorry about last time. It was pretty funny because I told Brahma that I fell down a cartography rabbit hole. And so, I run a tabletop game on the weekends for my friends. And since I'm the one running it, I had to come up with all the material, right? Yep. So I've been working on this world for the better part of a year at this point. And the main city they operate out of, I finally decided to sit down and start working on it. And I've been doing for like the past several days. And then Tuesday rolls around. I'm still working on it. And I'm like, kind of feel like I'm forgetting something. No, it's no big deal, right? So I keep going. And I stop at like 11 o'clock. And I check Twitter and I'm like, oh shit. It's like I totally blew off Shags. I felt so fucking bad.
It's what happened too with me was like, I kind of sat here and I was sitting in the live window, and in StreamYard, and I'm just like, well, people are late sometimes, no big deal. And it got to be like, I think maybe 20 after, and I was like, I'm just gonna go play some video games. Like this is just the perfect time to play video games and just chill. Cause I hadn't, since my like health scares at the beginning of February, I really hadn't played anything, and I was really just like, I was trying to recoup, and I think I ended up going to bed a little early that night too, which again is good. And so it was just really funny, like how it was kind of a blessing that we didn't, we didn't do something, but yeah, it was a missed opportunity, but hey, we're here now, and that's all that matters. But no, yeah, that's cool. But for people who don't know, I mean, a lot of people who will see this, they know who you are. They've seen your show a couple times or several times. But for those listening on other platforms, why don't you give people a rundown of kind of who you are and what you do on a day to day?
Yeah, well, I kind of bill myself as an asshole with a microphone, right? I mean, that's like my joke for like the longest time. But I got my start back in like 2017. Primarily talking about comics. That's where Comix Division comes from. There was, certain things I started seeing that was going on in the world around 2012, and it wasn't till years later that it really started manifesting in entertainment, because you had the whole thing with white privilege going on back in 2012 and all this stuff, and then you start finding it started finding its way into entertainment, and I'm like, I gotta talk about this stuff. I don't like this stuff. I had no idea what it was until I started watching several other YouTubers talking about this. The intellectual dark web. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept back in back in the day. And that's where I found Captain Cummings. I love comics. Angleton from I Love Comics. Your boy Zach talking about comics, and I was like, I got to talk about this too, because I don't like seeing this identity politics nonsense making its way into entertainment.
Yeah.
So that's basically where I got my start. Was talking about that, roasting comic books. Terrible name, considering I don't talk about comics anymore. It just seems kind of retarded now, but whatever.
Right. I mean, I don't know if this is like, even Ian K is a bit of a persona too, correct? Like how, like on like Ian K Comic Division, is that like something that you do like as your internet personality, or?
I mean, okay, so like the old way I used to do videos, I had the cartoon avatar, right? Which that was more of the persona, right? It was just like, I'm not gonna say me like cranked up to 11 or something like that. It's the idea behind it is that I'm doing this goofy, I think it's called the transatlantic accent, which is like, if you're familiar with like that, things coming out of the 1920s, 1930s, where they talked kind of like this. Yeah, it was the same idea, right? So I'm doing this voice, which I find to be kind of funny and annoying at the same time. It's pretty funny. There's plenty of people that I constantly get comments from people basically saying how dumb the voice is, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it, I didn't show my face for the longest time, mainly because of the industry I work in. You know, wokeness is pretty rampant through it.
Okay.
And so I didn't show my face. And yeah, I got involved with F&T for a good while. I didn't show my face on F&T until one day. It was 2020. And I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off and start showing my face. And it part of it too, it's a bit of a selfish reason, because editing videos with the avatar was so much more of a pain in the ass, because it was a lot more work. It's a lot more labor intensive.
Yeah.
Kind of animating between the different emotes that it had. And so I ended up dropping it. I dropped the persona, and I'm just more kind of being myself, maybe a little more dialed up, not so much. I don't know. But I mean, honestly, what I would tell people is not any different, I would say, in public, right? Okay. My whole thing is I'm not going to say anything in DMs or on a video that I wouldn't tell somebody in person.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it saves you a lot of trouble that way.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed. I mean, I've met you in person, and for everything that I can tell, like every conversation we've had in person, I think we've had online too. And it doesn't seem like you've pulled punches anywhere. And I agree. I think that's something that's really important. And I mean, it's something I mean, online in general, I think a lot of people like to pretend they're a certain way online.
Yeah. Crank up the asshole a little bit more than they would. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then there's no way they're backing it up in real life. And I mean, it's probably one of the reasons we're in the place we are in now, is people feel really safe being critical on the internet, but they would never speak out in public, because they know that there would be someone there to probably step up to them. Which is not. I think the other
thing too with like YouTube, I mean, there is a level, I think, of authenticity that people prefer over than just like a persona.
Yeah. I guess those are actually something that I was going to ask, was like, how do you think that people are receiving your message more authentically when, like, with your camera, just you in front of it rather than the avatar? Do you think people have been like, oh, like I can respect what this guy's saying maybe a little bit more than him behind a voice, and then also behind?
I think it depends on what people are into, right? Because it's there's definitely people who sub to the channel because they liked the avatar and they thought it was funny.
Yep.
And quite frankly, when I was doing the avatar, I feel like my comedic bits are probably more funny rather than just me in person and trying to be funny. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I'm not a comedian. I'm not Chrissy Mayer or anybody like that. Right. I just think that, occasionally I'll say something funny and maybe it will click and maybe it won't. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's because there are channels that do the avatar with the the animated emotes and stuff that I don't know, I can only in my head guess what they look like because I've never seen in person, but their jokes hit, but they might not be they might not in real life if they were just on the camera. But yeah, no, it's interesting how that works though, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty funny because like I'd always make a joke about what I look like a fat guy in a thong, and I'd find like a picture on the internet of a fat dude in a thong, which I'd look nothing like. Yeah. It's so funny because it's like, when the opposition shows up, of course they call you a neckbeard, and they think you're ugly as sin, which I probably am. I don't know. I don't fucking care, quite frankly. And
stop. I think you're handsome.
Why? Thank you, Shag. Oh, you. But it's like it's just funny because, like I said, they want to, because we are the opposition. They have to think of us as like basement dwelling neckbeards, right? Which obviously a lot of us are not the case.
Yeah. No. It's interesting. Like I do wonder, like, because even Twitter, I follow a lot of people on Twitter, and a bunch of people follow me, and I wonder, what are people's perception of me? Because I do have my real face on Twitter, but like, I mean, even here, you can only see from like just above my navel up, so you can kind of see what I look like, but in person, like your perception of me, have you not met me, might be like, oh, he could be kind of like fat, like he could have like a big waist and
explodes into a pear down at the bottom.
Right. Exactly, because people are like that. Yeah. And I wonder too, like, or how old is that person's avatar picture? Could it maybe that's 10 years old and that's not what they look like anymore. So it's always interesting how the internet just, like, we could be whoever we want, right? And in some ways that's really scary. In other ways that's really cool, because we don't, we could be comfortable in places that we wouldn't normally go. If you're an introvert, you can be on the internet and kind of experience a bit of extroversion. Is that a word?
Being an extrovert?
Yeah, being an extrovert. So it's interesting how that works though. But I think going to the meetups, like the FNT meetup that's coming up in Vegas, like really cool and great opportunity for people to get out. And you get to meet people, and it's such a judgment-free zone. Like there's no one there. Like I don't think I saw any beef going on. Like no one was getting upset. It was just hugs and how you doing? Like, good to meet you. I'm so and so. Like it was like one of the first times I'd been to an event and like, oh, cool. Like no one's starting any trouble. This is awesome. Yeah. So again, I'm looking forward to that, to seeing you guys again. But
yeah, same here.
Yeah, and I said this week after week, go to these meetups because they're a great way to just sort of, get in the groove and work those social muscles that might be fatigued from sitting behind the computer too much. But no, it's great, man. It's the internet's a funny place for sure. I guess that's it's being fair.
No, I mean, it is a funny place, right? Because it you get all sorts on the internet, for better or worse, I suppose. It's, I'm going to say, part of the reason why socially we're in the predicament that we are in, because before, I'm just going to use just the term village idiot, right? Just that kind of weirdo. You can call the SJWs village idiots, whatever. And normally, every village has an idiot, but that idiot is by himself. And the problem with the internet is that it literally gives access to all the village idiots to each other. Yeah. And suddenly, I mean, it's good and bad, right? Because if you're the village idiot, you realize that you're not alone. But it just given all these like weirdos access to one another, and kind of like spread these crazy ideologies that are, been catching fire and have largely gone unchecked up to the point where Elon Musk got Twitter. And that's where the other side started, having another voice again, right? Yeah. Because when the institutions control literally everything from Twitter to YouTube to Facebook to Pinterest to whatever, and they're all pushing the same narrative, it's like suddenly all of us, it's the reason why we all exist, right? Is because we were seeing all the social justice stuff. And if this is being pushed as the norm, suddenly you're like, it's like, I don't believe any of this crap. Is there something wrong with me? Yeah. And turns out that there's nothing wrong with us. It literally is them. That's the problem.
Yep. I was actually talking to someone about this today because we were talking about something. I don't know why police violence came up, but it did in
Mhm.
some sort of way. And I was just basically saying, like, I think, the big problem is like these things and like social
Yeah.
media. Like everyone has a camera in their pocket, and you can immediately share all this information. And like you said, these village idiots can basically coalesce into a giant mass,
Mhm.
and they spread whatever panic, fear around, and then people believe it, right? Whereas
Yeah.
before, but even 25 years ago, right? You like information didn't travel this fast.
No.
You'd have to wait a day and
Mhm.
like read your local paper, or
Or the
the regional,
news, you know.
yeah, or see the news. And and now it's just like within hours or minutes, you can get
Minutes,
news
actually.
in Japan, right? Something
Mhm.
happens in Japan, you know about it a few minutes later.
Yeah.
That's insane. Dare I
It
say
it it is
unprecedented.
insane.
Yeah.
Well, and the other issue with it too is that part of the thing with the social media and everybody having a camera in their pocket, it's both good and bad, right? Because sometimes I think context gets missing. It's
Yes.
like, when it's like I don't know what we're allowed to talk to about on YouTube anymore.
Me either.
Let's talk about the whole thing with St. Floyd, right?
Yes.
You know, that is a really good example of not getting the full story.
Mhm.
And once you had the full story, it's too late at that point
Yeah.
because they released the body cam footage and you saw what really happened. You get more context around what he was doing a year before what happened. He literally did the exact same thing with a different cop, different
Mhm.
results, obviously.
Right.
And it's scary how something like that can be taken out of text, manipulated, used to push people down a certain path. We had, fiery but peaceful protests. Everything was holy and saintly during the summer of love. But God forbid you talk about, January 6th and, and say it was a mostly peaceful protest, which it mostly was, but there was definitely bad things happening that do need to be called out.
Right.
And everyone talks about Jan 6th, but they conveniently don't want to talk about what happened during 2020 with the summer of love. And that's the thing that's so frightening about is
Yeah.
5 seconds can really change the narrative when you see it, when you see the full context of a story. And
Mhm.
that's kind of the problem where we're at. One of the things that really kind of blew my mind, and it's one of those things that we all know about, the media lies to you. And
Yeah.
it's different when we actually see it with our own eyes. And
Yeah.
one of the things that happened is that there was a trucker and he was going through, because there was all these protesters on a freeway. He was, you know, trying to slow down, eventually does. And you see all these people rush up and they literally pull him out and start beating the shit out of him. Same day on the news, they showed the exact same footage, but the narrative was that he was lost control of the rig and that the protesters were rushing in to make sure he was okay.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't hear about that. That's,
Yeah.
well,
It's one of those things where you're like, holy shit. It's like, if I didn't see that on Twitter, I wouldn't have known the truth.
right. Yeah. Well, in that, and like a lot of and I've spoken about this to people, and I've tried to encourage people, like, read past headlines first of all,
Mhm.
but like, I mean, just see, because most of it is lying through omission, right? Like these, like, whether it's omitting details in the headline and then you read into the
Mhm.
story and they give you the full details in there, but they're betting on you not getting enraged by the headline and sharing that headline and making your own assumptions and creating, like, it's almost like this self-generated social narrative. It's like,
Mhm.
well, we reported the real thing, kind of,
Kind
but we're
of.
allowing you to just sort of make up and get mad at this. And
Well,
I've
the,
seen
the
that a
other
few
issue
times.
too is that it's the lie of omission, which is the biggest lie, and quite frankly, I think the most devastating lie when it comes to media and entertainment and news in general. Because reading about what is going on right now with Sweet Baby Inc.
Mm,
And when they reference Gamergate, there's so much that is being omitted by the other side,
yeah.
and that's the thing that is just insane.
Mhm.
It's like
Now,
you guys are literally lying by omission.
so the Sweet Baby Inc. stuff, for people who don't know, is basically a company that was created to to go in and look at games and how to, maybe you know it a little bit better, but they were essentially like going in and fixing games to make sure that they properly fit the diversity, equity, inclusion standards.
Yeah. So basically, they're a narrative company, and they come in and give advice on games, right? And pretty much what you just said. And it's a very difficult thing to talk about because of what they say they do versus what they probably do versus what we don't know versus what we do know, right? Because one of the big issues that I've been pointing out is that a lot of the people who are probably in these game companies now were in college during Gamergate, these SJWs, and now they have gone and infested the workforce. And so they've made their way into these gaming companies, and they're the ones who are truly pushing for this stuff, right?
Yeah.
They are just basically, there's two ways that this is probably happening. And again, this is speculation on my part.
Yeah.
You had the people that have come in, they bring the ideology, they infest the company, and then they open the door to Sweet Baby Inc. Yeah. The companies that are resistant to it are the ones that are being strong-armed into using them. That's my assumption.
Yeah.
But the issue is that the problem is already there in gaming. This isn't all Sweet Baby Inc.'s fault. If there wasn't a demand for this nonsense, companies like Sweet Baby Inc. wouldn't exist.
Yeah, incentivizing these companies to, like monetarily to do these, and Hollywood's fallen victim to the same thing. They're being incentivized to uphold these standards, and we saw even in the Academy wasn't allowing certain was it like best director and all that stuff you couldn't actually be nominated for that if you didn't have certain diversity standards check boxes.
Right. And well, that's the funny thing about it is if you take a look at this year's Oscars, they basically probably ignored all those guidelines because Oppenheimer won, was it 7 Academy Awards? Barbie won 1. And we didn't see any of the political posturing that we normally see coming from these celebrities. And I'm pretty sure everyone was told, behave yourselves. Last year was very devastating for Hollywood. It's clear what we're doing is pissing people off, and I think that the Oscars really is a barometer for what is going on in Hollywood. Since we're no longer seeing all the preaching, I mean, we had that last thing with Jimmy Kimmel at the end, which basically it's like, you're a sucker, dude. You fucking fell for the bait.
Yeah.
But it was largely my understanding. I didn't bother watching it. Apolitical, and it was, I guess, largely what you would expect from the Oscars, kind of, but more boring. I don't know.
I don't really put much stock in that stuff anymore. It just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem legitimate. DEI stuff aside, like a lot of that stuff doesn't. I would say a lot of times the best picture, best director, I agree with it for the most part, but a lot of the other ones I'm just like, who cares? I don't really care. A lot of it
is that the Oscars is very political, not in the politics sense, but I've had people that have worked in the industry. I've known people who worked in the industry, I wouldn't say have them, but they've told me about what happens during Oscar season. Literally, you have people going out and campaigning for movies, for Best Picture and all this stuff. So that's what I mean by it's political, and a lot of it is not about being the best of the best. It is basically, you'll see certain people that like totally blanking on the dude's name. Crap. He was in Titanic.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He's one of those individuals. He's been nominated several times and has been passed over, and eventually like, we got to give him an Oscar. So they gave him an Oscar for that one movie like several years ago. Yeah. And that's what I mean by political as well.
Revenant,
it's stuff like that. Yeah, Revenant. Yeah.
He deserved it for that one. That one was incredible. That was an incredible performance, I thought. But I think there were several movies even before that he was way on point, I'm just like,
Departed was good.
Departed, yeah. I'm always of like the redemption stories. Like people have been talking about Robert Downey Jr., like him coming from just having such a troubled past, getting locked up and then making a big, huge comeback and winning 2 Oscars now.
And Kimmel making a joke about it.
Yeah.
Went over like a fart in church.
Right. And what's funny is like, Yeah, and like that, it almost shows me too, like Kimmel's has fallen so far,
Mhm.
because I know that, like, Robert Downey Jr. has talked about his issues, but never really joked about them. Like he's always been
Mhm.
thankful he's had another chance.
Right.
Like he takes it seriously, right? And I
Mhm.
think like that's just like, come on, dude, like a little tasteless. Like it's one thing to like acknowledge it and say, hey, I had an issue. I'm
Yeah.
so glad to be where I am and thankful. It's another to, I don't know, man. But we all know where Kimmel is nowadays. It's just, like I said, it's a long fall from the top. I think it's a long
Mhm.
fall from girls bouncing on trampolines. So
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is ultimately the irony, right? Is that, the fact that he came from the Madden show and, all these things, all the things that he's done that, of course he's on the right side now. So everyone overlooks the fact that he was in blackface.
I know Karl Malone.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I know a lot of it's funny because a lot of these very super liberal progressive types are the ones that end up doing blackface, comedians wise, right? I mean, Sarah Silverman,
Mhm.
and I'm not gonna say you can't do it if it's done right. I mean, I thought when she did in her show, it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And because ultimately what you're doing is you're mocking the idea of it, right?
Right.
And as she explained it, it's basically a super progressive person making fun of other super progressive people doing blackface,
Mhm.
which was ultimately kind of the joke.
Right.
But I think at the end of the day, we as a society we've become so sensitive to things like that and making jokes and whatnot because one of the things that we had a bit that we did, it was kind of poking fun of the Pinochet thing with him tossing people out of helicopters, and I had a guy from, was it Brazil? Is that where that happened? I don't remember. Chile. It's Chile.
Chili. Yeah.
And basically complaining about that, saying, "Would you guys do a sketch of World Trade Center bungee jumping?" And I was like, "Abso-fucking-lutely." Because and he was kind of upset because it was crass, and I was like, "Yeah, it is crass. Comedy is crass. Okay,
Yeah. Yep.
there's times where you are literally making fun of people, and that's comedy,
Yep.
and you have to be able to take a joke." And it's like Talks, who lived in New York when that happened. I told him about it. He's like, "Oh, hell yeah, we would do it."
Mhm.
Because he gets comedy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Okay, so it's a good little pivot to something that I've been wanting to like just kind of gauge the room on people that are on our side of everything, because I think comedy, like, so comedy is a very specific thing. It requires you to like poke fun at someone, right? To
Yeah.
like to get in someone's feelings a little bit,
Poke fun of
and
somebody, a situation, things
yep.
that can be sensitive. I mean, it's the reason why, making fun of racism, making fun of things that make us uncomfortable. I mean, the funny thing about it is that literally the same day that the Challenger exploded back in the 80s, there was already like a dozen jokes I could tell you
Oh
about the
man,
shuttle explosion
that's
that
brutal.
day.
Yeah.
I don't know how it spread so freaking fast, but literally everybody knew the jokes. Everybody.
Wow.
How do you fit 12 astronauts in a VW bug? 2 up front, 3 in the back, and 7 in the ashtray. I mean, literally, that was the day of the Challenger explosion.
So fucked up. Oh my god, it's so good. But yeah.
Yeah.
But like, okay, so this is how I feel right now about a lot of like people, like a lot of criticisms happening, right? I feel like today nobody can handle any sort of criticism that's dealt their way. And it's the same way that I see people not being able to take a joke. And
Mhm.
I don't know. And I think the issue is nuanced, right? Because
Right.
if I'm being honest, a lot of what I'm talking about is like, and because it's so fresh in my mind, it's Comicsgate, Rippaverse, indie comic stuff. You have all
Mhm.
these people creating awesome shit, and all they can think to do is throw mud at each other and call each other names. And some of the criticism I think is valid. I think some of the criticism is done in way shitty bad faith. And then there's this like weird amoebic middle ground where people are just following their favorite people, right?
Yeah.
But I think we're
Well, I mean,
still
yeah. I mean, the whole thing is for me. It's like, don't, if you live in glass houses, don't throw fucking stones. Okay.
Right.
And the other thing too is don't worry about the other guys doing. Worry about your own shit.
I do think
that's kind of the way I kind of view a lot of the stuff, because I know there's some people out there, they love Ethan. That's fine. I don't care. But I don't get why there's beef between certain people. I really don't. It's just like, fucking do your own thing, man.
Well, and that's what I mean. Is like, do you like, and that's why when you brought up the comedy thing, the only thing like that's what I immediately thought of was like, yes, like the way people can't take a joke is like there's a lot of people who can't like take like criticism, and whether, and like I said, whether or not it's you're trying to say, oh, well, this person, because I think I tweeted about it today. If you think someone is maybe criticizing you in bad faith, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's someone's criticizing my YouTube videos or how I do a pull up or something, if I think they're doing bad faith, I could still use that as a way to like even build my own self-confidence and ignore what they're saying. And be like, well, I don't need to deal with that because that's someone who doesn't even know what they're talking about. Or if I think that what they're saying might be true or might have a grain of truth to it, then I can use it. Oh, like, okay, I see what they're saying there. I can maybe build on that. And because as I said in my tweet, like usually nothing you put out is perfect to start out with. Sometimes you got to go through iterations of it. So yeah, I guess I just want to maybe get your thoughts on that, because we both do a lot of stuff that deals in commentary and criticizing a lot of things around the board. So I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Well, for me, when your currency is criticism, don't be surprised when you get criticized, right? Sure. And that's something I always tell everybody. I am not above criticism. You know, if you don't like something, I get it. That's fine. We can. A lot of it too. It's like if it's constructive criticism, yeah, sure, I don't care, right? But if it's like, oh, I don't like Comix Division because he's boring, that's a comment I've seen before. I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah. I honestly, I don't let that stuff bother me. And the thing is, if you're going to be a YouTuber, you're going to be a somewhat public figure, you have to understand that you're going to say something that's going to piss people off. Okay. Yeah. Regardless, it could be like, the joke is, I like pancakes. What's the matter with waffles? I mean, that's just the reality of how people are going to react to something. Yeah. And it's the reason why I try to just throw caveats out there just to try and catch what I can before it happens. Yeah. But the reality is people aren't going to like you. They're not going to like your face. They don't like the way you talk. You sound stupid. You talk like a retard. Stuff like that. Right. I mean, that's just the reality. And you don't know what's going on with these people. Maybe they're just an asshole. Maybe they're having a bad day, whatever. Right. Maybe something you said just rubbed them the wrong way. That's just the reality. And you have to be able to roll with those punches and take the valid criticism that you're like, okay, that's a valid point, and fucking pitch the rest, man. And don't complain about it. Yep. There's plenty of times where SJWs will come at me over something. I'll snipe at them back for a bit, get bored, and then I'll move on. And a lot of it is the sniping is for my own personal entertainment more so than anything else. You're right. It's just like, because there's times where you just want to say something and set them off and walk away, right? It's like throwing the hand grenade in the room and walking out. Yep. It's like, because I like another example of this is somebody, I mean, obviously they're familiar with my content because they basically say I complain about videos or, whine about movies. I think is the exact quote, which I do. I own it. You know, it's reality. Yeah. And we're talking about the whole thing with the D&D movie. I was like, it's like, I didn't hate it. It's not the D&D movie I wanted. That was my comment. Right. And it's true. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it for what it was worth. But it's not what I wanted out of a D&D movie. It's definitely better than the past two iterations I got, but it's not what I wanted. And ultimately what I want out of a D&D movie is something more like the movie The Dragon Slayer, or Dragon Slayer, I think is what it's called. Yeah. And, it was from an 80s, great movie. A lot of practical effects. I'm sure a lot of them don't stand up now, but right. Overall, thematically, it was what I was looking for out of something like D&D. And like I said, the guy was sniping at me. I was like, look, he's basically like, well, you're not allowed to like it because of, the crowd you run with. I was like, has nothing to do with my opinion. Yeah, right. The funny thing is that they think we have to have this approved list of things that we like. And it's like, whatever.
I was going to say too, like, have you found that being a part of FNT, like, it comes with a bit of baggage with people? I mean, you kind of answered it, but like, does it come with a bit of baggage that you have to like certain things or
No.
no? Okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what is your probably most controversial differing opinion that you've had on that show where everyone was like, we love or hate this, and you're like, well, I like it.
Gary is a big fan of Joss Whedon, specifically Buffy and Angel, and I think Joss Whedon is a hack, and he did not like that comment.
That's awesome.
I was shut down really fast, but it's true. I'm not a fan of Joss Whedon. The only show I really liked that he did was Serenity. You know, I couldn't get into Buffy. Wasn't a huge fan. Spike, I thought was a fun character out of the show. But overall, I just couldn't get into the show. And I think that, in my opinion, Joss Whedon is way overpraised.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, no, totally. Actually, and it's funny because Serenity is one of those shows. I saw something going around Twitter the other day, and I didn't think of it till late, but the tweet was like, what's a show that only had a season or two and was, but that deserved more. And it wasn't until I think the next day, and I was like, oh, Serenity, like I would have loved another couple seasons of that, but we never did. So, but I don't know. Sometimes those things, it happens for a reason, maybe we weren't supposed to get it, but I still would have really liked it.
Firefly. I mean, it was such a good series. I think I said Serenity by accident. That's the movie.
But
Firefly, Yep. Firefly was a really good series, and honestly, I think that Joss is a better director of movies than TV shows, because the first Avengers was really good. I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie that he did, and the Serenity movie was great. There's times where I felt Firefly was kind of dry and drawn out and could be a bit boring at times, but overall, comparatively, it was a fucking great show. Yeah. I mean, literal, wagon train to the stars story, which is what, Trek was originally supposed to be. And I think that they really kind of captured that with Firefly.
No, it's crazy. And it's crazy to see now, where we've gone, to kind of come full circle back to where we were before, like how DEI has taken over so much of these movies and series, and it's just seemed to ruin them. And it's only I don't know. And I the question I really have is like what do you think we come out of this? And if we do, what does Hollywood look like afterwards? Like, are we talking that it's a kind of a collapse of what we knew, and then we're going to get something completely different, or are we going to somehow get back to where we were? I
honestly, I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm not going to say a flip flop between, things are getting better, things are not changing. I think that a lot of it is the fact that we have to get the people that are in there out, and that's going to take time. I think ultimately right now is that, sure, they're pulling it back a bit because of the fact that they're massively losing money. 2023 was not a good year for Hollywood, between the strikes, the fact that Disney lost copious amounts of money. And those people are still there. They're still making decisions. And nothing is going to change until those people get out. Because like I said, during Gamergate, all the people that are in those companies now were in college and being indoctrinated by the message back then. Yeah. And now they've made their way into management positions, development positions, HR, and they're the ones that are basically controlling who gets into these companies now, right? I don't know if you heard about the whole thing with, there's a lawsuit against Disney, specifically them not wanting to hire straight white men. A lot of these companies, not just Disney, are doing this, because if you go to LinkedIn and you apply for a job, they will literally ask you what's your race, what's your sex. They won't ask you what your sexuality is, but they are asking things that they normally do not ask. And the issue is when they go and collect that data, they're able to go and filter candidates based off of what they are looking for.
Wow.
Tech has too many straight white men in it. Well, okay, we're going to look for more women and people of color. And because they're asking these questions, they're able to go and filter those results based off of that. It's highly illegal. by the way.
Yeah.
But you have to prove it. So
that's sorry, keep going.
No, I mean, and this is the reason why I think it's going to take time to dig our way out, because it took 20 years to get into this position, and it's going to take another 20 years to dig itself out, right? And a lot of it too, it's Gen Z apparently is not having any of this stuff, and as they make their way into the workforce, maybe we can pull things back a bit with them getting in. But literally, I think this is going to take another 20 years. Sure. I think we'll see incremental improvements. They're still there. They're waiting for us to age out. That's the issue. The people with this ideology, it's the reason why they always say that liberals don't have kids because they have your kids. And that's ultimately, kind of the issue.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So, and then for people who don't know, we're kind of getting back into it, but like the Gamergate thing was essentially, so it started in 2014. And it was, or 2012, 2014, that sort of time frame.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was like in like gaming journalism, like video game journalism. And it was dealing with like sexism and or not really racism, but like this very thing, like feminism, diversity, and progressivism in the field.
The funny thing about it is I think if you ask the average person what was Gamergate about, they're not going to give you a correct answer, because the background behind it is that you had a game developer named Zoe Quinn. I think everybody's basically heard the name.
Yep.
She had a boyfriend. She cheated on her boyfriend. She cheated on her boyfriend with 5 dudes. Hence the joke, 5 guys, burgers and fries. That's what she's referred to sometimes. So she gaslit her boyfriend, and he ended up writing a rather unflattering blog post about Zoe Quinn. And that got out. Well, the main issue that people had was the fact that her game, one of the individuals that she slept with was a games journalist, and who gave rather positive reviews of her game. So that is a huge conflict of interest. So that's where the whole thing with ethics in journalism came from, is the fact that, okay, you have this shitty person. Yeah, she fucked around on her boyfriend. No big deal, right? Fucking everybody does it. Not everybody, but you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
The real issue is the fact that she slept with this dude, games journalist, gave her a positive review, and that was the problem, right? Mm-hmm. So this is where the ethics in games journalism has come in, and we know that they basically have been softballing stuff for a while, because if they don't, they won't get the review copies, and that's what snowballed. So it turned into sexism in gaming because of what happened, because Zoe Quinn got outed, and basically her friends in the media ran to her defense, and that's when we start getting the Gamers Are Dead articles.
Right. Okay.
Because this pissed off the people in the gaming community, basically what happened. And so they start calling this shit out, and then the journalists started basically punching back at them.
It's interesting because so that's where like I missed the prequels basically, which is that whole thing. And like media runs with like the other part of it, the sequels.
Gamers are sexist.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, well, you miss, and I just see like her middle name is Tiberius. Cringe a little bit, but
really?
Zoe Tiberius Quinn. Weird. But it's just weird. And that's just a quick explanation for those who don't know. We keep seeing Gamergate, and in case you don't know what it is, that's essentially where that comes from. And now this whole thing with that's happening with Sweet Baby Inc. People are calling that Gamergate 2.0 because now everyone.
Well, the journalists are calling it Gamergate 2.0 because the funny thing is that throughout the years, anytime something would pop up, Gamergate happened the better part of a decade now, right?
Yep.
The original people who were involved with it moved on with their lives. Everybody moved on except for the games journalist. Yep. And the other thing too, that was a problem during that time period, is that people were complaining about the fact that games journalists would complain about how games are too difficult. It's like, literally, this is your job. I don't like the game Sekiro because it doesn't have an easy mode. It's like, you're a games journalist. Your job is to play games. Now, I can understand, to make your life easier to get completion, maybe wanting to put it on easy mode, but not all games are going to have it, okay?
Right.
And so they would get into the whole, this is ableist because there's not an easy mode and all this stuff. It's just ridiculous. It's like, gamers don't care about that. Sekiro is a great game. All the FromSoft games are hard for a reason.
Yep.
And part of it too He's like, do you remember playing Nintendo when you were a kid? And how hard those games could be?
Yep. No save points. And if you were lucky, the game would have like that code that would like pop up, like in Metroid. They would like, oh, you died. You could write this down before you turn the game off, and you could start kind of where you were, you know. But yeah.
So I mean, games used to be a lot harder, and then when things have gotten easy, I would say mostly, and then you'd have something like Dark Souls or Elden Ring come out, which is just it's a challenge, and it's supposed to be a challenge, and it's it really is a game that's like get good or go home, right? And it's fine, but you can't say as a games journalist that the game sucks because it's too hard, because you can't fucking play. And that's ultimately the issue. Is a lot of these games journalists, they're not gamers, they don't like games, they don't like gamers, and they're reviewing games. It's like, this is clearly a conflict of interest for you.
There's a really good, I really recommend everyone, if you haven't listened to it, and if anyone in the audience hasn't listened to it, I really recommend the newest Joe Rogan, Abigail Schreier episode. They talk about this. So they talk about how, or Abigail talks about how a big reason why we're seeing so much like strife in young people is that we're medicating anxiety out of them. Like we used to like, it used to be a normal thing for like kids to lose a parent, lose a sibling, like just because life was difficult or we didn't have like certain medicines or whatever. We don't have any of that anymore. We don't live in a war-torn country. We don't really experience any true hardships. And if you do look at the people who are experiencing that stuff, it's not something that they're thinking. It's not really something that's bothering them.
Well, the thing that's kind of weird about a lot of this is that I want to say it's probably started a lot longer than this, but it was definitely something I kind of noticed in the 80s, where it's like if you're just being a boy, right? If you're a boy and you're being a boy and you're being spastic, they want to medicate you, right? Because you're easier to deal with. It's like, this is how kids are.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're medicating all these people, we're medicating people when they have problems. Oh, I have stress and anxiety. Well, everybody has fucking stress and anxiety. You learn to cope with it.
Yep.
I mean, life is unfair. I mean, severely unfair.
Yeah.
And you got to find ways to deal with it. Just going, life isn't fair. I'm going to go take my medication so I can feel better. It's like, learn to cope with your emotions, learn to deal with them. And that's kind of the thing. I think that's like one of the biggest issues that we're seeing with particularly with millennials, not all, obviously.
Yeah.
Is that it really is every generation kind of gets a trophy thing, right?
Yeah.
We've taken away competition. We've taken away hardship. Part of it is good because, no war, famine, all these things. We have good life. But I like to say that probably one of the best things that happened to me was being bullied in high school.
Yeah.
Because it prepared me for the world. Yeah, it wasn't fun then. It sucked. I had a hard time dealing with it. But you know what? It made me a better person.
Right. Well, and now you probably
gives you the coping skills, right?
Right. And you wouldn't deal with it now. You have the skills to like defend yourself against people who would either do you harm physically or emotionally. And that's huge. And now, again, it's not to say that people should experience that, but like, again, even something as simple as like, I can't get through this game, so someone should fix it for me. It's like, first of all, there's two things. One, your company sucks. They should be putting the right people on that game to document it and write about it. Put someone on there that likes those games so that you can get a proper article. Two, it's a video game. And if you think that you need to write an article about how people are ableist because you can't do it, there's huge problems with that way beyond your inability to play games. And that is a huge thing. And this part is very new, but I mean, I think this goes way back to even when, I mean, after I guess maybe basically like World War II, Vietnam, when we were pretty much like out of like big wars, like when life in America was just pretty, like after that, we were top dogs. We pretty much were like world police and everyone, life was good. Obviously the wars in Iraq and stuff like that is totally different. But I mean, it's totally different. Like we are after that. We our purpose and everything that we do was like, I think everything was about making our life great, material, easy, and this is how I show it off. And it just bled into everything. And the way people just were searching for meaning, and one way to make their lives easier was to suppress these emotions, because before you just had to get over it. And the advances of modern sciences and stuff, like people are, well, what do we do now? Well, we can cure anxiety. We don't have to be anxious anymore. We just take this pill and we feel good. But not realizing that, and this is so crappy to say, but like there's, I guess in some ways, like there's acceptable losses in humanity, right? Like and that's not even probably the best way to say it, but people are going to come and go, and it's the worst thing.
Well,
right?
That's the reality of it, right? It goes back to that whole thing where it's like you can't save everybody.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's unfortunate. That's just life. That's part of life is death. And it's the last couple of years has been hard on myself and my wife. 2 years ago, I lost my stepdad. Last year, my wife lost her mom.
Oh, man.
A lot of things happen, and it's like you have to be prepared for the worst, because it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
The whole joke is that nobody gets out of life alive.
Right. Yeah. And I hate saying that to people, but it's like, it's the truth. And you're not even less than that. Like, you're not going to get out of this unscathed, like something is going to happen. Something is going to hurt. And you need to learn to deal with that part of the process. And even today, oh man, it's so funny that we're talking about this today. I'm walking my kids down to like the bus, or like to the elementary school. And my kids, they like, when we go out on a walk or bike ride, my older boy likes to run ahead. Right. Like, okay, I'm going to go first. I'm going to run first. And I was like, And it was the second time he did it 2 days in a row. And we got to the end of the road and we were about to cross the street. I was like, hey guys, I just want to let you know, like every time you race, like, I just want to let you know, sometimes you're not going to win. Like, it was just like one of those like weird moments that I thought like it was a good time to say, you're not going to win all the time. And that's okay. Right. Sometimes you'll lose, sometimes you'll come in second, but sometimes you'll win. And they were like, oh, okay. And it just felt like they kind of got it, and they won't until they really experience it. But preparing the younger generation to realize like, it's going to suck. You're going to
fall on your face, and it's fine. Right. I think the other thing too is not to, let that fear of death stop us from living our lives. And that's where the anxiety thing comes in. It's like, you have to go and say, hey, this is going to happen. You can mitigate it so much by not being stupid about things.
Yep.
But you have no control of what other people will do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Like, cause I think a lot about, especially now with kids, like mortality, the idea of mortality is much like more in focus than it ever was. I never really cared about anything prior to having kids, and now I'm just like, like, is that going to cause any harm?
Yeah.
But I think about what you said, and I'm like, well, I can't let that stop me. I still got to have some sense of adventure. Like, anything could take me out. Like, I could, I could be sitting here and lightning strike my house, come straight down here and hit me. Like, I don't want that to happen, but it's possible. I could walk outside and get hit by a car. But I can't not go outside. But there's people out there that scare themselves stiff over it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's lots of things. I mean, one of the examples that I have, so, I own a ranch, I bought it from my parents. It's out in the middle of nowhere. For like the majority of the time that I've been going out there working on stuff, never seen a rattlesnake before. It's just how it's been. Last year, 2 encounters. Scared the ever living piss out of me. But it's like you're out in the wild for the most part. I mean, it's middle of nowhere. Yeah. Not out there all the time.
Yep.
So things are going to go and take a precedence in certain places.
They weren't threatened because you guys are the same size.
Oh yeah, totally.
Sorry, I had to get a size joke in.
Yeah, that's fine. No, but I mean, it's funny because I bought the Smith & Wesson Governor. Judge is the Taurus, basically for snakes. And I there's times where you get comfortable, you get laxed, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to carry the gun on me.
Yeah.
And then I'm locking up And it's funny because I'm walking over the shed and I just see this thing like fucking flip around, coil up, and start rattling at me. I'm like, whoa, holy shit. I mean, it's nowhere near me, right? It was like a good probably 15, 20 feet between us.
Yeah.
And it's like, you motherfucker, I got to get over that shed and lock the thing up.
Yeah.
So I go over to, you know, my truck. I get the gun out and like a fucking dumbass start chasing after the snake to shoot it. Of course I shot it, but it's like I had no idea. There could have been more. And it's like I wasn't wearing snake boots at the time either.
Yeah.
So if it had a partner in ambush, I could have been in some trouble. But
damn.
Yeah, I mean it was that was scary. The first time though, it was like in April, maybe May. It was still kind of cool. And so there's different types of rattlesnakes. Diamondbacks tend to be more aggressive. Timber rattlesnakes, you can literally walk past it a foot away and it will do nothing to you because they're just not aggressive. I go to the shed. I'm opening some stuff up. I'm getting mud off my shoes because it's been raining. And I look over to my left, and literally like a foot away from me is a coiled snake, and it's a rattlesnake. It's a timber snake though.
Oh, okay.
So the timber snake is like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "I'm getting the fuck away from you."
Yeah.
That was a diamondback. Probably would have bit me.
Damn, that's scary. So this is a good segue too to the other thing that one of the reasons I want to talk to you as well, because you're someone who likes to prep and make sure that you're prepared for anything that might happen in the future. And this is something that, like, you know, in the past it would have been like, oh, that like weirdo. But I do think it's really, I mean,
it's psycho.
Yeah. But as you get older, as you understand like how important being prepared anyway for anything, whether it's for tomorrow, the next week, but you know, for real hardships. You and I have talked about, and I've read that book. What was it? God, I can't even think of the book now. About the EMPs. 1 second later.
I think it's 1 second after.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've read the entire series so far. And that one, honestly, I found to be the most difficult to read because it deals with literally everybody dying, right? And the next books afterwards deal with rebuilding. But yeah, it is really, if you want to understand why you should prep, that is definitely a good book to read. It's depressing as fuck.
Yeah,
it really is. But the reality is, and the funny thing is, like when I was in my 20s, we had Y2K.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it is like my attitude now versus then is completely different. I'm like, it's no big deal. Who fucking cares, right? And I go grab my jar of peanut butter. I'll be fine. And fortunately, everything was fine.
Yeah.
But what happened if everything was not fine? And literally, they didn't fix the bugs in time. And literally, you hit 2000, and suddenly you can't get money out because all these systems are fucked up. You can't go to the grocery store and buy food because of this bug is preventing people from being able to go and use their credit card or their debit card. And you're having to use cash, or maybe their systems are down because everything's computerized and they can't ring people up.
Yeah.
That would have been a problem. Fortunately, it didn't happen. But in retrospective, my attitude as a 20-year-old versus somebody who is now 50, vastly different.
You're 50?
Yeah, I turned 50 this year. Yeah.
What? No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the longest time when I was prepping, my wife thought I was crazy. She's like, this is dumb. You know, it's unnecessary. And then COVID happened. And, you know, the funny thing is I love telling the story because it's pretty funny. It was literally February 28th. I got done probably watching an episode of Tim Pool. And I'm like, because he's talking about what's going on in Australia with the fact that they're running out of toilet paper and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm fucking going to the store and buying a shitload of food. And so, yeah, I spent like, I went to my wife. I'm like, I'm going to the grocery store. She's like, why? I was like, this COVID thing seems like it's getting serious. She's like, yeah. So like, you think there's gonna be a food run? She's kind of mocking me a bit. She's like, you think there's gonna be a food run right now? I'm like, no, that's why I'm going. So I spent $250 in groceries, went back to the next day, bought another $250 worth of groceries. And Friday, I don't remember. It's like I don't know if I got a haircut or something, but I was driving back and getting ready for F&T.
Yeah.
And I see that my local grocery store literally is filled with cars. I'm like, what is going on here? I pull in, I go inside, and the place has been freaking cleaned out.
Everyone saw you like, what's this guy doing? We gotta go shopping.
Oh, this is like 5 days later. That's the funny part. So I mean, it's like no toilet paper, no paper towels, no Kleenex. The frozen food section is cleaned out. The meat section is cleaned out. The only thing that's still around, all the eggs are gone too. Milk is gone. All the vegan shit's still there. So I ended up picking up like some more water and some frozen pizzas that I could find. That was basically it. But I was like, I got everything already, right? So I tell my wife about that. She's like, okay, now I kind of get it. Then Snowvid happens, right? Yep. Texas gets hit with this massive snowstorm. It happens on Valentine's Day. We lose power. We lost it for a week, right? Wow. We were supposed to be rolling blackouts. It didn't roll. It just literally stopped. Probably because a transformer in the neighborhood blew, and it took them some time to get everything back online because literally all the shit's going on. Right. I have all this food on hand. I have a gas outdoor stove for camping, along with a propane stove that, or grill for cooking stuff. And, making breakfast. We have no power. The house is cold. But we're able to cook, we're able to eat, and we're fine. And I was like, do you understand why I do this now? She's like, yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's so I guess so basically that's once Snowvid had happened, you were like, okay, had you been doing it before that? I mean, or
I was already doing it. I mean, this is, I've been doing it for years at this point.
Okay. Is there, like in your opinion, like if someone's going to get into it, like what do you think are the essentials that you need to start off with? Like, these are the things you need to make sure that you have on hand, like in case it all just happens.
Well, I think with everything is that it's really easy to get overwhelmed when it comes to prepping, and you have to start small. Okay. And the easiest way of starting small is saying, okay, I want to have enough food and water to last a week. Now, there's several things you got to take into consideration when you're prepping for an emergency. You got to have a way of cooking. You need a way of filtering water, and you need to be able to store water and obviously food. So it's starting off small, and you want to kind of grow it out. And it's looking at, okay, I have a week's worth of food and a week's worth of water. Okay, you got that situated. What's next? Okay, well, if I lose power, how do I cook this food? Okay, if you have an electrical can opener and you don't know how to open cans, obviously that's a problem. Buy a can opener. Buy one of the what they call it, the P2s, the little manual ones. Or you can get the twist kind, right? So obviously you have a means of opening up your food. Okay, what's next? Okay, how do I cook it? Well, I have an electric stove. If power goes out, I can't cook. Can't use your microwave. Okay, we'll get a camp stove. Get a camp stove, a little thing of propane, have several bottles in case there's a prolonged period of outage. Okay, now you got a means to go and cook your food and boil water if need be. So where do you go from there? You start looking at obviously having redundancy, because if you have that camp stove and it doesn't work, well, it doesn't do you any good.
Right.
Same thing with the canisters of fuel, right? You need multiples of that just in case, because sometimes things run out. And that's where having a grill works too, right? So if you have a camp stove and a grill, that's redundancy. So the main thing is you need to have a gallon of water per person per day, right? So if you are a household of 1, that means 7 gallons of water. If you are a household of 3, that's 21 gallons of water. And and obviously when you start, the more you get, the more you got to think about where to put it. One of the things that I have is, and again, this is not a lot of water. It sounds like a lot of water, but it's not. Right. I have 2 55-gallon drums in my garage. Basically that, I think is enough to last both my wife and I. Well, it's 55 days. Okay. So almost 2 months, provided that there isn't anything, that gets refreshed. I have more water. I have I think they are 7 gallon jugs as well. So it's find stuff that you can stack, which is good. Part of the issues over the years that getting water barrels to store stuff has become a bit difficult. It used to be pretty cheap, and now it's kind of gotten more expensive. Because I want to say those big blue, 55 gallon drums I have, it cost about $300 each.
Oh wow!
Maybe they're $250. And they went up during COVID too, so I did pay a bit of a premium for it. But yeah, it's like I got 2 of them. The good thing is at the ranch I have a well, but if the power goes out, there's no water, which is why solar is a good option to if power is lost, to go and have a way of powering the well. But the issue is that when you start looking into more and more issues, you're like, okay, what about an EMP? Solar flares, all that. And there's a point in time it's like, okay, buddy, gotta pump the brakes a minute. If there's solar flares and we have no power, everybody's fucked. I mean, literally everybody's fucked.
Right.
So yeah, you try and do what you can and not have anxiety about the next thing. What about nuclear war? I don't have a hazmat suit. I need a gas mask. All this stuff. It's like, oh fuck, dude. You gotta assess what the issues are going to be. Okay. Most likely, the most likely scenario of what's going to happen is either going to be natural disaster, maybe terrorism. Okay. Again, terrorism is going to be the more extreme. That extends out to the whole thing with war. What if there's a nuclear war? Well, I think if there's a nuclear war, you're not going to worry about it because you'll probably be dead.
Right.
EMP is a different situation, which is what happened with 1 second after.
Yep.
But it's again, if that happens and you have food on hand, find a way of collecting water and filtering it.
I was gonna ask too. Well, let me ask, because there's a couple questions from member messages here, but there was a question about meat prep. Is there what would be the best thing to prep meat wise, and how? Do you have any idea?
Freeze dried.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that's more expensive. Okay. Yeah. So I do have a freeze dryer. They are $5,000. They are not cheap.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
We're all going to Comix's house. If anything happens, we're going to the ranch.
Right now it's broken. I need to fix it. But yeah. Okay. So meat prepping, there's several ways you can do it. You can actually can it. And canning, you're looking at probably a good 5-year shelf life. And canning is easy. It's cheaper than freeze drying, and you can meat. All you do is there's plenty of YouTube videos, but you can get the glass jars. You can get a pressure canner, and those are obviously going to be. Sorry, cat on the desk. I got him down. It's not enough room up here. It'll probably cost you $200. $200 is way better than $5,000.
Yeah.
And plenty of videos on how you can go and can meat, and that's your best way of doing it. The other thing you could do is create jerky using a dehydrator. And dehydrators, again, are cheaper. You're probably going to pay $100, $200 for a dehydrator. You can do that, and again, you can Mylar bag it and store it, and it will keep for about a year.
Yep.
The main thing is to go and cycle through the stuff that is not going to last. Freeze drying lasts 30 years.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's definitely the way.
It is. So, I mean, I would just go buy raw chicken, cut it up, throw it on the freeze dryer and run it through and then store it. So that way, what you do is when you open up, you basically soak it in water to let it rehydrate, or you can cook it. Basically you have a broth or something, throw the meat in there and let it rehydrate that way.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways of doing it. Yeah, the high-tech solution is freeze drying, but people have been canning stuff for ages. I'm trying to remember, pemmican, I think, is another thing that you can make. And trying to remember how it's made. There's plenty of videos out there on how to make pemmican. But basically you're getting tallow and and meat, and you're basically dehydrating the meat. You're breaking it up, and you're kind of putting it into like this mix, and you're baking it. And it's more kind of like a hard tack type thing. So, but it keeps.
In the Wiki Be Badass, do you use liquid oxygen in the storage water?
Liquid oxygen? You talking about when you're freeze drying, or?
It looks like the water storage.
Okay. So one of the things that when it comes to storing water long term, you can get stuff that you can put in there to basically preserve it. The issue with water is water can go stale, and the easiest way of dealing with stale water is to oxygenize it, right? And that's basically you could take 2 cups and basically pour them back and forth, and that's how you get oxygen back in the water. It's like with a fish tank, right? When fish get oxygen from the water, and obviously when the oxygen is depleted, the water becomes stale and the fish die.
Yep.
It's kind of the same idea. Now, I have multiple ways of filtering water, so I didn't worry about it. I just filled the vats with water, and I have a Lifesaver jerry can that I use to basically refilter the water when I use it. So what's great about it is that there's a pump where you basically build up the pressure, and it basically will pump oxygen into the water.
Oh, cool.
And so it pressurizes it, so when you open it up, it'll let the water out, and it filters the water too, which is the great thing about it. And it's a jerry can, which is basically 5 gallons.
Yeah.
We used it when there was a boil notice during Snowvid, and then but again, a lot of this stuff is not cheap. Prepping is not a cheap man's hobby. It can be if you are very frugal about things, but there's a lot of filtration systems are not cheap.
Well, I imagine
one of the more important things.
And I would imagine too that you, like, being someone who preps, it can also just help you in like your day to day. I mean, you could teach yourself a lot about like farming and indoor farming, maybe. Again, like just sort of keeping up. Like if you have property, you have a ranch, like you turn a lot of that stuff into your own self-sustaining zone. I mean, you would have to know about that, especially if it were a prolonged thing. Like, so if you're on a ranch and an EMP goes off, like you might not have access to the world outside, but you have a fairly self-contained place that you could make, and you obviously have to protect too. So there's that side of the prepping, is making sure you have the proper, I don't know what you can say on YouTube, but I'm sure you'd want the right firearms and pew-pews to make sure that you are protected. The one I was going to ask a question about the water. Do you have to worry about anything like plastic, like leaching into the water or anything like that after a certain amount of time? Like I've heard that like if like they can pull the impurities out of the plastic, like the water can, after a certain amount of time. Is that a thing, or is that not?
I mean, I haven't really looked into the whole plastic and water thing, and I know there's the microplastics thing, but if probably one of the best water filters you can get. Oh, crap! So I totally blank on it. Shit, it's not pure. Damn it! It's been a while since I've thought about it. Hang on, let me see if I can actually go find it on Amazon. But they are really good water filters, but they cost you money, lots of money. And I want to say I got a very basic one a number of years ago, and I want to say it was like $300.
Okay, so see if you can find it. I have a couple like super chats and like a couple things to read real quick. Sumo Orange for $2 says, midgets are funny. Comix is a midget. He is funny. Thanks, Sumo Orange. Appreciate the $2. And another super chat from Sumo Orange for $2.
Berkey, there we go. It's called a Berkey.
A Berkey, okay. I've actually heard of that. Shags is Captain Caveman. Comix is Batmite. Thank you, sir. And Wookie Be Bad came through with the 5 gifted memberships, hit our goal for the night. Thank you so much. We got a nice goal of 5 memberships a stream, so I appreciate you hitting that, Wookie, and you've been an awesome support. So you guys enjoy those memberships. Mr. Grant Gregory been a member for 9 months. Says, great to see Comix and Shags. And I did read the question about the meat prep and how to do that. And then WikiBads member for 6 months as well. Thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate your support. Been really cool. What's going on? Hey, Metastep. Okay, sorry. Back to the show. Yeah, man. The prepping thing it really has always interested me because as I look into stuff, I realize, like you said, it's not. You could be frugal about it, but if you want to do it right, it seems like it's a big investment.
Well, there's certain things you don't want to skimp on either, and water filters is one of them. And like I said, you got to have redundancy. I actually have probably between 4 and 5 different water filters at the house. I have my Lifesaver jerry can. I want to say I have 3 Gretel filters, which they're a press filter. It's really cool. It's like a water bottle, and you have a thing that comes out, and there's a filter at the bottom. And you basically you fill one container with water, and you literally press it, and it filters the water that way.
Oh,
so cool. I have 3 of those, mainly for the various bug out bags that I have. And then I have I think it's a MRS water filter that you use for like backpacking. That was the first one I got.
Yeah.
And yeah, then I have the Berkey at the ranch right now. So the main thing is water filtering is probably the most important thing. Obviously, you could boil it, but the Berkey filters are probably one of the best filters out there. Because I don't know if don't quote me on this, but I want to say that they could even filter radioactive water.
Wow, really?
I want to say might be over exaggerating a bit, but I mean a lot of it is like your Berkey filter is going to take care of a lot of the issues with water.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right too. I think the advice on like understanding, like prepping, I think in some ways is understanding like you're like what are you prepping for, and that like it's at a certain point, it's likely that like under certain circumstances, most people aren't going to survive, yourself included. Even like on something catastrophic, like we were saying, the EMP is. I mean, if you have anything, if you're not like yourself in like near perfect health, there's a good chance you're done. I mean, the one thing they talk about in that is insulin, right? Anyone who is diabetic is like, you got 30 days.
You're screwed. Yeah. You got, your days are numbered. Well, the other thing too, you talk about, what are you prepping for? Cause like a lot of it too, the worst thing that can happen is a prolonged power outage. Whatever leads up to that, that's the ultimate thing. And obviously that's what the book, 1 second after covers, or was it 5 seconds after? I don't remember the name of the book.
Yeah.
But that's the most important thing, because the issue, I live in Texas. Without electricity, doesn't matter where I'm at. If I'm at the house or the ranch, I'm screwed. Everybody's screwed. And the reason why is because of water. Without power, I can't water what I'm growing at the ranch. Because this is a very hot state. Yeah, we can get a lot of rain in the spring. Once it hits summer, it's basically drought season.
Yep.
And that's the reason why understanding, okay, well, how much water do I need to have? Having a water collection system is important. All these things, there's certain things that you're going to have to sacrifice if you don't have a lot of water, like bathing, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
So it's looking at, okay, realistically, how long can I survive in this situation? Okay, if there's civil unrest, as long as there's power, I have a place I can go to, I'll be fine. Got plenty of food there, got plenty of water there. There's a whole ocean underneath me. It's just getting it out. The problem is it's 250 feet below, or 150. Yeah. I think I'm slightly over exaggerating with the 250.
Right.
You can't hand pump that.
Nope.
You simply cannot do it. You need to have a motor to do it, which is the reason why you need to have power. It's like, yeah, I have a windmill. Windmill is great. Doesn't pump water all the time.
Yeah.
If it's really windy, everything works fine. But there's times where it's a casual wind and nothing's coming out because there's, not enough water.
Yep.
Or, there's not enough wind to drive the water. This is the reality.
I did think. Oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, but yeah, you got to think about your situation where you're at. and what you need to survive for a prolonged period of time.
I did think that the 1 Second After book, and it's a book that I think everyone should read just because it's really good, and I think it. I sure hope we're not heading to something like that, but in case something ever did, it might give you a little perspective on what you could expect. But I thought it was a
lot
good,
of people are going to die,
right.
and that's the thing that I think with any situation like that, you got to be prepared for.
Yep.
You need to prepare the fact that there's people you're going to know that you're going to lose, and you might have to kill somebody. And I mean, that's frightening. I don't want to be in a situation where I have to defend myself.
Yep.
But the thing is, the mentality is, and this is why if more people prep, the better off we would be. Because you have your neighbors, you have a good relationship with them, they're fine, right? Mm-hmm. What happens when they run out of food and you got food? Well, they're going to come to look to you. And the issue is when you start handing stuff out to people, more people are going to come to your house. Hey, I'm hungry. Can you give me food?
Yep.
And the issue is where you're like, no, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't give you anything.
Yep.
This is the reason why you need to prep.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that at some point in time, people are going to want to come and take your stuff. And this is where security is a thing. You talk about, the need for self-defense, pew-pews and whatnot. Yep. But you got to sleep too. This is where and part of prepping is not just about who has the best supplies. It helps, right? Community is another issue.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing. You hit the other major thing. Fitness being one, something I'm working on.
Yep.
And then community, because you need all these things to be able to survive, not just food, water, shelter. Because if you're constantly fighting with your neighbors for resources, all they have to do is show up when you're sleeping and, put one in your head and it's all over, right?
Yep.
So it's like, preppers aren't immune because there's people that have the attitude of, I don't need to prep. I will just take your stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that when I talk to people about the need to work on like your communication skills, like, or, and your the physicality of it, like your communication skills are just like your muscles. I've talked about this in the last couple of streams. The more you work your communication skills, the more adept you'll become. Same thing with lifting. The more you lift, the stronger you'll get, and you can defend yourself physically and all that. But all these things work together and because we'll eventually have to come back to that. And people, in the caveman days and, before all this social connectivity and the internet, like you relied on the people closest to you. And if you were in strife with them and something happened, well, what happened? You got a rock dropped on your head and people took what they thought was theirs.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if something ever happens in this way, you got to be prepared to do that. And building relationships, going out, knowing your neighbors, and knowing limits and how much you can give, and not necessarily being the guy who gives away everything. Because when they need it, they're going to come knocking on your door. Because hey, Tom, he loves helping people out. He'll give us some of his freeze dried meat. Well, what if I'm starving? I'm probably not going to give it up, and then it's a bad, it might be fine at first, but then you got to learn how to diffuse the stuff. It's all works in tandem. And that's another reason why, like, not everyone is going to be good at this stuff. Some people are going to be better than others. And it's, again, acceptable losses. People are going to succumb to it because they don't have the skills. And that's really hard pill to swallow, but it is what it is.
Well, it's the reason why I think that most people should learn to garden. I mean, it'd be great if everybody could garden and have chickens, but that's not the reality, especially with like homeowners associations and stuff like that. I would love to have chickens. Can't have them because of my neighborhood.
Yep.
Doesn't mean it technically couldn't stop me from doing it, but I think that it is the more of people growing their own food, the better off we would be. The more people that had stuff on hand, the better off we would be in a situation like that.
Yep.
The sad truth is that people are going to make excuses not to do it. I don't have enough money. Well, neither do I. Okay. Still don't have a job. Still find ways of prepping, right? Even if it's just buying additional green beans or something, making sure that I have that stuff on hand, cycling out the tuna fish. I realize that the tuna fish I have is 5 years old now. So I have to start cycling through it. And it's still edible. It's fine. One of the issues that you'll find when you have canned food that's older is that it will start tasting a bit tinny.
Yep.
I started noticing that with the tuna fish, but if you leave it in the refrigerator for a day, usually it stops tasting like the tin can.
I was going to say too. I was going to ask you what you thought about. So that Civil War movie was announced.
Oh God, it looks awful.
Well, one of the things that I thought about was, so besides the stuff that people were nitpicking about, like with like
California and Texas,
yeah. I just thought that 1 second after, I think, does a great job at illustrating how awful the world like can reduce itself to.
Right.
Civil War, I don't know if they could honestly accurately make that movie what they want it to be. Like even if they want to say, hey, this is a movie about what a real civil war would look like in the United States, like I don't think people realize how awful it really would be if people are like opening fire on each other and all this stuff. Because I mean, we know that one of the bloodiest wars in history is the American Civil War. Mm-hmm. You know, it was awful, and that was with muskets.
Right. Well, the other thing too, that what a true Civil War looks like is like the Spanish Civil War, and what we had in America was, when it comes to civil wars, was very unique because it was literally like two different countries fighting each other.
Yep.
Now I don't know much about the Spanish Civil War. Something I need to look into because I'm not sure how it was happening, but you literally had people fighting in the streets. It's not like there's a battle line drawn and we're gonna have an army on one side and an army on the other. It's literally people fighting in the streets.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we potentially could face with a civil war. So that's something to research. Like I said, it's something I need to look into as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one movie that I thought was interesting that came out recently was called Leave the World Behind. That's the movie that the Obamas sponsored on Netflix or producers on.
Yep.
Which seems kind of sketchy to me.
Right.
But okay. But it's kind of about a black swan event that happens. And the thing that's interesting about it is that you have this family, they go on vacation. They're in New York City. They go to, I think it was like Long Island. I don't remember, Staten Island, maybe. I don't know. One of those islands out there.
Yeah.
It's like, they rent a place, and then suddenly all these weird things are happening. And then somebody shows up at the house, and it's the owner of the house. And the owner, in the book, it is an elderly black couple. In the movie, it's a black man and his daughter, and there's like all the stuff that happens. But what you end up finding out is that there is like this black swan event that's taking place, and you literally see New York getting nuked. It's freaking insane.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that it was interesting because apparently Obama was basically giving the director, oh no, it would happen like this. It's like,
oh yeah, right. Like,
yeah, it's like it makes you feel comfortable, right? Knowing that what we know about things.
Thanks, Obama. Making me feel real good right now.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, it's a kind of a pretentious movie, but I thought it was really well done. And ultimately for me, the hero in the movie is, of course, the redneck conservative prepper that everyone's kind of making fun of at the beginning of the movie. And then they head to him to, for help. And he's kind of like, no, man, it's like, I'm not going to help you. Yeah. And because it's the whole thing of it. It's like we're discussing. It's like, it's like what is mine is mine. It's like, we have nothing to say to each other. It ultimately, he does end up helping them. But it's one of those things that you got to understand the mentality of what's going on. And it's a great perspective of seeing what happens when you have like these very liberal people being stuck in this situation where suddenly everything's dog eat dog.
Yeah.
And how they, kind of deal with it. It's, kind of the same thing with, 1 second after. Again, that's written by a conservative guy for the most part.
Yeah. Well, then it becomes too like when in the case of like Leave the World Behind, where he saves them and all stuff like that. Like when people are able to like pull people in and like, okay, this prepper pulls these guys in, they're helping each other and they're working together. It becomes a Walking Dead situation.
Well,
You
that's what
hope
the
you
community I'm talking about comes in, right?
right, and you hope that you can keep that group together and you don't pull the wrong people in, or the people don't fracture off or betray one another because you don't.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like that's the risk you take, and I'm sure preppers are very aware of that. They're like,
Yeah.
well, I want to help people, but I also don't want someone to crush my skull in the middle of the night and take all my stuff.
Yeah.
Because people don't think in the long term most time, especially when they're starving, right? Like they're not thinking straight. They're just thinking, I need food. So without even knowing like how they would handle all the stuff this person has, they take it, he's gone, and now like there's no keys to the safe or keys to this, or doesn't know how to run the the filtration system, and then they just die anyway. So there's so many things that can happen that people just aren't thinking right when they're in that elevated state of stress and survival.
Yeah.
But yeah, survival is a weird thing that we don't, as a species, or like most of us, all of us in the chat, people are watching, like most of us haven't really had to experience like what it means to have to survive. You know, we've talked about it, we've tried to observe it, and that will either be good or bad. And it'll be good now because we might be able to learn and take on that responsibility over the next couple of years to educate ourselves on it. And you've done your part a lot in learning how to prep, and I think our conversation tonight is like a really good primer for a lot of people, like understanding like where they can start. And then
it's like start small, because like that's the big thing, because you don't want to get overwhelmed. It's about doing things incrementally. It is kind of the key thing. Like it's like I said, start with a week's worth of food and water, and then assess things from there, and build on top of it, and see if you can get to a year's worth of food and water. Is that even possible? Because the big thing about it is that when you prep, that requires storage. Where are you going to put the stuff?
Yes.
There's a lot of logistics that go into it as well. For me, it's like, okay, if literally the shit hits the fan, how do I get to the ranch? Because the main thing, like what we've seen with any kind of disaster movies or stories or whatnot, is that suddenly, there's the freeway, but freeways run through cities, and suddenly those cities are blocking access to those freeways because they don't want people coming through. Right?
Yep.
And that's something you got to think about. Okay, well, how do I get here? How do I get from point A to point B? Sure, I can drive. But what happens when I encounter a barricaded freeway or road with armed guards telling me to turn around? So those are obstacles. You really got to plan out how you're going to get to these different places.
What kind of American are you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like on the way to the ranch, there are several small towns that I have to drive through to get to where I'm going.
Yeah.
And how many of those are going to have people, basically, okay, where are you going? Are they going to let you through? Are they going to see you coming and just shoot? Take your stuff, right?
Those almost scare me as much, right? Because you have people who like the military almost probably has maybe a more reserved trigger finger, whereas like people in a small town would be like, hey, we're all in this together here, but who are you? I don't recognize you. You know what I mean? So you're running a as great a risk, if not more, by getting through those. So sorry.
No, that's the reality. So it's like, okay, to get to my ranch, it is literally 5 days on foot. So, yeah, I mean, driving, it's an hour and a half, right? Hour and 45 minutes, whatever. No big deal. Walking, 5 days. By bike, maybe 2. And those are the things you got to think about logistically, right?
Yeah.
The best time is to get ahead of the disaster. If things are getting wild, it's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Right. Yeah, you try and get out before, if it's possible, right?
Yeah, because you don't always have notice. And my wife, she has to head into work now. And what happens if something happens while I'm at the ranch working on something? It's making sure that, okay, can she get to me now? And how much trouble is she going to have getting to me?
Yep.
Or if I'm here, she's at work, something happens, her getting here, getting to the house, and us getting, out of here. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that you got to think about. It's like, it would be great if I could just live out there, but it's like, it's a manufactured home. It's not an actual house. I mean, it's fine. Provide shelter. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I was to move out there, I actually want to build a house out there, a proper house.
Yeah. There like, there has to be like a shelf life on fuel, like gasoline, oil.
Yeah.
Like you have to worry about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your standard ethanol gas doesn't last long. You can put preservatives in it to extend the life. Probably 6 months. Unleaded gas that's non-ethanol lasts longer, and you could definitely stretch its life out. But yeah, you got to cycle through it. Like with anything that goes bad, you got to cycle through it. I have a shed full of bad gas right now that I need to get rid of. But I have jerry cans that roughly a year old that are perfectly fine because I have preservatives in it, and it's on regular unleaded gas. Yeah, it's like I should probably cycle through it. Just throw it in my truck or my Jeep, and refill it. But yeah, I mean, it goes bad. It's like the reason why when you have that lawnmower and you leave gasoline over, the winter, and you go to start it, and it doesn't start because it basically starts breaking down, clogging up your carburetor. It's a bunch of issues with the ethanol gas. It's really bad. So it's like if you're driving a lot, it's not a big deal because you're burning it before it goes bad.
Yeah.
But you need to make sure that you get regular unleaded without any of the crap in it.
Okay. Well, shit, dude. I feel prepared. I feel like I know what I'm going to be doing this weekend. Spending $250 at Target and getting ready for the apocalypse. I hope everyone else is. No, man.
I mean, if you are interested in stuff, I can give you a list. But it's like start small. Like I said, the Gretel filter is only $100. It's about yay big. It would take you some time to filter a lot of water with it, but it's great for having it in a bug out bag. And like I said, I have 3 bug out bags. I have one I keep in the truck, and I basically kind of cycle it if I'm driving the truck or the Jeep, and I'm going away. And that's more of a get home bag than a bug out bag.
Wait, bug out like I'm bugging out of here, like getting out? Like,
yeah, the idea behind it is that you have everything you need to be able to basically get to your safe location.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, shelter, food, whatever that you need if you're having to hoof it. And again, the great thing about those bags, you throw it in your car and you drive off with it. And if for whatever reason you need to get rid of your car, you have the bag. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of videos that talk about it and what you want, how much you want it to weigh, because obviously you don't want to have a super heavy backpack that you're having to travel 200 miles by foot,
right?
Because yeah, and in the middle of summer when it's 100 degrees outside, I mean, these are all things you got to take into consideration.
True. Yeah, especially in a state like Texas, like, and then like conversely, like where I grew up in New England, like, I mean, it's cold oftentimes and weather can change like that. Like it's insane how fast weather can change in New England. And even where I live now, like the weather is pretty quick to change here, but it's kind of nice and dry in Utah. Mr. Grant Gregory wanted to know, what Flint fire starter do you have in your bug out bag? Do you have one?
I have several things I use for starting fires. Obviously, it's about the redundancy, right? So I have waterproof matches. I have several lighters, and I do have a flint and steel, for the most part, or a ferro rod.
Yep.
And
it's funny.
Those are pretty cheap. You can buy like $20 off of Amazon.
I watched the show Alone because I like watching survival shows, and that's probably my favorite one out of them all. And one season, a guy had that. Was it a ferro rod?
Ferro rod, yeah.
Ferro rod. He had it, and he started his fire, and he put it on the ground, like right next to him. but it rolled down into the fire and he didn't see it. And then he went to like start a fire, like his fire went out. And then he like woke up the next morning and was about to start he was like looking around. He's like, where is it? And because he was filming like him starting the fire, he went back and looked at the footage and was like, oh my God, like I just dropped this. And the only other way he could start a fire was the bow, the bow. And he was like, I can't do this. Like, it's not, if like my fire goes
it's hard.
out,
it's hard.
Like because those guys, like the problem with that show is it becomes like a who can starve the longest show. And he's like, once you get to a certain point and you're calorie deficient, like running that bow for however long, or in the drill or whatever, is like, he's like, I can't keep that up. And like keeping the fire going, because I think the place where they were, I think, was Patagonia. And I think it was like wherever they were was really wet. Maybe it was Vancouver Island. It was really wet wherever they were. And he's like, if this gets rained on, my fire goes out, like I can't get this going. And I felt so bad for the guy because he was one of my favorites, and it was only like the 4th or 5th day the guy was out. But don't burn your ferro rods. That's not good.
Well, that's the reason why redundancy is so important, right? It's like, okay, got matches. And the great thing about it too is that you can buy plasma lighters. So they require a charge, which means that as long as you have a means to charge it, you have something that will start fire anywhere, right? Yeah. Provided that it still has a charge. So those are great. If you have a solar panel, you can charge it. You can charge your phone, all this other fun stuff. But yeah, I mean, Bic lighters, man. Bic lighters are great. Buy them. Yep. I have a ton of Bic lighters all over the fucking house, right? Because there's times like, where the fuck are my lighters at? And I go out and I buy some more, and then eventually I find them. But they're so important. Starting fire is hard. It really is. It's like we talk about the whole thing with the bow and drill. Yeah, that's great if you can get it to work.
Yeah, right.
It's like any of these things, it takes practice. Yep. If you want to be able to start a fire with a bow and drill, you need to practice doing it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like hunting, okay? But you're right. A lot of those shows are who can starve the longest, right? Because a lot of the issues with those shows is that the people that, the situations that they're thrown in, they're not native to that environment, and they're not going to perform as well. Yeah. And hunting, you'd think would be easy, but it's not. It's like anything, right? It's funny because I have cameras at the ranch. I see all these deer when I'm gone. Never see them when I'm around, right? Yep. Why is that? Because they can smell you. Whatever. Yep. But yeah, I mean, it's any kind of primitive hunting. You need to learn to be proficient at it. Even throwing a spear, because like before there was the bow and arrow, there was the spear and atlatl. And for those of you who don't know what an atlatl is basically a stick that you put the spear on, and you would basically go overhead like that, and it would propel the spear greater distances. Yeah. So this is what mankind was hunting with before we had bows and arrows. Obviously, bows and arrows are better, but again, that's another skill. If you want to hunt with a bow and arrow, you need to learn how to shoot it. It's the same thing with a gun. Yep. In order to hunt deer with a rifle, you need to learn how to use it and be more proficient at it. So, yeah. Everything with survival is practice. Learning a skill. Yep. Oh, it's crazy how, everything about it is, and that's what I mean when I said before, being a prepper sometimes it's almost like it's something that everyone should do, because it can teach you all these things, and it could teach you some even primitive survival skills if you wanted to go down that path, because ultimately you might have to resort to that stuff, learning how to trap, learning how to use a bow and arrow, like learning, to hunt with the wind. And then, even hunting in winter versus summer, fall, like all this stuff is different. Because in Alone, they talk about how getting to these places at a certain time
sometimes the rabbit, like they haven't turned, their coat hasn't turned white yet to blend in with the snow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's so cool because this is how we did things. Very recently, you know, for a short period of mankind, we had like all of these tools that have made life so incredibly easy.
Yeah.
I mean, just to go, like, we have unlimited resources. We can just go down the street, get whatever we want. We're hungry, go get it. Just pull up, get some shitty food out of a window that some overprivileged teenager hands you. You know, like,
yeah,
it's a beautiful thing. But to put all this stuff into practice takes a lot of time. A lot of people have some great input in the chat here. There's a lot of people saying they got stuff in their bug out bags and what to do to start fires. Toxic Man Flu's over on Rumble was saying dryer lint, egg cartons, and candle wax make a hell of a fire starter.
Yeah.
Actually, save all my dryer lint for that reason.
Dryer lint and Vaseline.
Yep.
Yeah. It's the same idea. The Vaseline just makes it a lot easier. Excuse me, it's easier to catch. I need to take a sip of water.
Yeah, go on.
These are other things I have everywhere. Nalgene bottles.
Yeah.
Okay. I initially got these for camping. I like using them because they're BPA free. Oh. And yeah, again, great bug out item.
Yep.
I have these in my bags. I have these all over the house. I have them at the ranch. And again, relatively cheap.
Yeah.
It's like, I would say $15-$20.
And great tip, guys. Because we're coming up on the meetup here in Vegas, Comix Division has lots of big lighters. So if you're a smoker, make sure you ask him for a light while you're standing outside the Millennium Fandom Bar.
The funny thing about it, the thing that sucks about traveling is that you can't bring any of your prepping items with you.
Right. No bug out bag for him.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's one of those things that I always think about. It's like, what happens if I'm in Vegas and shit hits the fan? How do I get home?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get back to my wife? Yeah, these are things that do enter my mind whenever I travel.
Mm-hmm.
It's having that plan A.
Yep. Well, and that's that. Like, and even going back to what we were saying, like, that you think about that stuff, but you can't let it stop you from doing things that you like, because it could happen anytime. And more than likely it'll happen when you're at the store in your town. But hey, you never know. But yeah, that's a huge, Mr. Grant Greger said, it's a long walk back to Texas from Vegas. So, but hey, maybe you just go there on a bike and then, I don't know.
Well, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, you just basically hunker down there. You know, that's another thing too. And that's something I don't want to do. I'd rather get home. Yeah. But do you basically find a place to hunker down? Because that's a long way home. I mean, that's over 1,000 miles, I think, from where I'm at. I don't remember. And I mean, just as a casual drive, that is like a, 3-4 day drive casually. Could probably do it too.
Is it really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not as far for me, but I think to Vegas for me from where I live is about 7 hours. 7 hour drive. It's not too bad. Yeah. But I wouldn't want to walk that far.
Yeah. If it's a 7 hour drive, yeah, dude, that's a long walk.
Yeah, it's a very, very long walk. And not in the best of environments either. Yeah. Like
my ranch is 150 miles away. And that is a 5-day walk. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. And that's, it would have to be sure. Like, I mean, from Vegas to me, a 6 hour drive, 7 hour drive. I mean, it would be slower than anything else because you need to conserve as much energy as possible. And you have to make sure you're walking at the proper times and all that.
Well, and the other thing too, is you got to look at, okay, so what am I willing to do? Okay. Yep. At that point, it's like, not condoning theft.
Right.
But at that situation, I'm looking at, okay, I'm stealing a car and driving home. If I can't get gas, I find another car and I get that one. and continue driving. And of course, I'm not going to be the only one thinking of this.
Right. If it came down to that thing, like everyone would be, you'd be one of many trying to figure these things out, especially, and that would be the scary part in somewhere like Vegas, because it's a destination, right? So few people, I mean, there's people that live there, but there's a whole, like that whole strip of people, it becomes a panic zone because everyone's on vacation and they're like, well, where do we go? How do we get home? What do we do? And then everyone's thinking the same thing. I'm yanking you out of your car and I'm going down the freeway out of here. So yeah, it's scary, but well, sir, this has been an educational conversation, I have to say, but also an enjoyable one because, as I said earlier, it's been a long time since we caught up, and this is exactly what I want to talk about. And like the prepping stuff is something I've always wanted to ask you about and talk more about, and this was the perfect opportunity to do so. And I'm looking forward to hanging out in Vegas. It's going to be a fun time. You guys are nuts right now because they opened up the signups for the event, and it's sold out like before they could even get normal members, regular subscribers in there. All the members took the spots for Wednesday. So they opened up the second day, which is, so you guys are doing Wednesday and Thursday.
Thursday.
Okay. So that's awesome. Obviously you guys are there for both days. Are you staying till how long are you guys staying down there for?
No, I haven't got my ticket yet. It's something I need to do before. Normally I end up buying my ticket like in January, February, once everything's figured out. Obviously because of the situation with work, I've been kind of putting it off.
Yeah.
So, I probably, I'm going to fly in like Wednesday morning and then fly out after F&T, probably like midnight the next day. Yeah. So it's like, I can't stay long like I have in the past. So I'm probably gonna do what I did last year, which is basically, it's, I say Friday night, but technically it's Saturday morning at midnight.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully my wife won't kill me.
That's my plan right now is to leave here hopefully Wednesday morning, leave. I was thinking about staying Saturday morning or Saturday day and then leaving Saturday night. I'm trying to work the flights right, because once you spend Friday night into Saturday, like hotels get really expensive for weekends. So I'm trying to work that out, but I hope I get to see everybody there. For everyone who watches the midweek hump, we're taking this week off just so everyone can sort of recoup, rest. A couple people are sick. Some people just need a break anyway. And we're going to be celebrating our 100th episode of the midweek hump in Vegas at the Salty Nerd Podcast studio. So, Comix, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome to join again. I think we're going to do it Thursday afternoon, so before the meetup. So if you want to come out and hang out like you did last time, we'd love to have you. I've asked you. I've asked Culture. I was gonna ask Garrett again to kind of come out, like if you guys have time. I know you guys are busy that day or that evening, but if you guys want to come celebrate, I think 100 episodes is huge. So we want to celebrate and have a good time. And then I think we're gonna go down. We're not gonna go in because we can't, because we're doing Wednesday night at the Millennium Fandom. But I think we're just gonna like hang out outside if we can, and maybe at a bar nearby. But we love hanging out with you guys. We're there to celebrate with you guys too, and support you all. So thank you for continuing to do all that good work. And dude, thank you. I mean, you're, like I said earlier, your content that you do. So it's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday that you're doing your shows.
Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday on Rumble.
Yep.
Exclusive.
Yep. Well, and so before you go, tell everyone what you got coming up, show wise and all that, so they can check you out.
Well, tomorrow we have Yelling at Park Cars, and we actually have a Yelling at Park Cars YouTube channel, which we have not been streaming to, but we're probably going to start streaming there as well. So we're both on Rumble as well as YouTube, and it's not connected to my primary account. So if I say anything, it doesn't nuke my channel. And that's been part of the reason why I moved Yelling Apart Cars away from YouTube, specifically my primary channel, is because of that. I blame Tox. Hi, Tox. I love you, buddy. No, but he made an offhanded comment. It's like, I don't blame him. I blame YouTube. Yeah. He made an offhanded comment about something, which I will not repeat because YouTube. Yeah. And we got a strike, which was bullshit. Yeah. And the funny thing is, it was the 2 strikes my channel have gotten has been around medical misinformation. And some of it is just, it's been offhand comments from people. It's like, the thing that is ridiculous about all the censorship is that we can't have a casual conversation and we can't question the narrative regarding certain things. And that is so dangerous. This is the reason why I always tell people, you got to read Reclaim the Net, because they're constantly talking about how the WEF, the federal government, all these things, they're pushing this mis and disinformation. I'm not going to say campaigns. I mean, technically, I guess you could say they're campaigns, but remember when we had the Ministry of Truth for like 5 minutes?
Right.
And then they're like, oh shit, people are freaking out. Let's reel it back a bit. I mean, none of that stuff goes away, right? It just gets buried, renamed, whatever. Yeah, they fired Nita Jankowicz, but somebody else is now running the stuff. And there is so much information out there about how they want this cohesive narrative being pushed, and that if they anything, and this is why Twitter was so important when Elon bought it, is suddenly you had a break in the narrative. And so they don't like the fact, they don't want an informed public. And this is we talk about the whole thing with like games journalism. They don't want an informed public, because an informed public is a dangerous one. Yes. Which is the reason why, today's misinformation is tomorrow's truth.
Well, we're seeing that now, right? Yeah. Everything that everything that we were trying to just talk about as, casual conversation is now like, oh, well, we do treat this as that. And we're like, yeah, we were saying that and we were getting strikes for it, and
now it's accepted truth.
Yeah. And that's what, but that's the hard thing, right? And I could talk all night with you, right? And I don't need to keep going. But like the one thing I can't stand about today is it doesn't matter really where you're at, but a lot of people have trouble just having casual conversations. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I was so apprehensive at first about talking with Ethan Van Sciver was because I was afraid of like the backlash that people would have with me. Like I'm just a guy on YouTube trying to talk to people. Right. I understand certain people don't like them, and I don't blame them because he's wronged some people and whatever. But I'm just interested in having conversations with people in a lot of ways that like, and I'm not comparing myself to the man, but in a lot of ways like Joe Rogan does it. Like he talks with everybody, and he's gotten into like little like back and forth with people, but like he's not like necessarily taking sides. And I find that really based. And most people are just sort of like, they're too caught up in their own drama to like just talk to the person. Who cares? And I'm on the outside of all this, right? Like I have no real affiliation with Comicsgate and with that drama specifically. But again, I'll talk to anybody because I kind of want to know them as people, because there's most people just want to have their day on Twitter. Like I'm going to have my say in my jab, and I'm going to get my likes and retweets, and then not really understand who that person is, because as we were saying earlier, it's easy to remove the context from something, and the news does it to get their clicks and their shares on something, or to try and push whatever narrative they want. And in the same way, I think you're seeing accounts now, because you're getting paid on Twitter, or some people are getting paid on Twitter for interaction. They're like intentionally stirring up shit so they can get paid, which I'm just like, this is stupid. Like, so again, that's just a long way of saying, I guess as King Deplorable says, tribalism is gay.
It is. Tribalism is gay, but it's part of human nature, though, right? Yeah. And that's a problem. It's always been a problem. It's always going to be a problem. It's something that's never going to go away. Yeah. When we talk about in groups, out groups, all this stuff. I mean, the funny thing about it is that they always want to say that only white people have like these ways of looking at other groups of people. The out group. Literally every group of humans is like that.
Yeah.
If you watch the series Shogun, granted, it's you know, it's a TV show, but if they're actually able to kind of capture the culture and how these groups actually react, just look at how they reacted to Westerners. They viewed Westerners as being barbarians. Meanwhile, the irony is they're boiling people alive, right? I mean, you can't get more barbaric than that. But it's like it goes back to the whole thing with the in group versus out group. And like I said, humans are tribalistic. We always have been. We always will be. And unfortunately, that is the nature of things.
Right. It is. Yeah, I guess that's how it is. And as someone pointed out in chat, we survived a long time like that. So it's just, it can work. There was one more super chat from Mr. Grant Gregory. He said Epstein Island sold to mogul Hadid Nakil Moussef, which I don't know who that is, but I'm sure it's not a good thing.
I don't know either. That's weird.
But anyways, Comix, thank you so much, dude, for hanging out. I look forward to chilling in Vegas. Anything else that you want to plug before we go?
No, not really. Just check out the show tomorrow. We'll be working on a video tomorrow as well, so hopefully that will be out before I go live. And lots of there's lots of entertaining things that are going on. I don't know if you heard about the showrunner for X-Men 97 getting fired. It's like, holy shit.
I did see that. Good. Damn. I mean, I don't want people to lose their jobs, but damn. They took her ass away. They took Rogue's ass away to take his job away.
Yeah.
But
it makes you wonder why, because it's like, why did they fire the guy? Because I don't think they fired him for being woke. I mean, that's Disney. It's like,
right.
I'm curious to see what the rationale is if he comes forward and talks about it. It should be interesting.
Nice. Well, guys, make sure you check out Comix and his channels. Make sure that everything's down in the links below. Please, it would mean a lot to me if you guys aren't following him. If you guys are listening on another platform, I appreciate it. I have the links as well. It was a great show tonight. We'll see everyone next week. I don't know who we have. I forget. I think we're talking to Epic Mike next week. So make sure you check in next week. Yep. Check in next week. We'll be hanging out with some really cool people. See you later. Toodles.
Bye.